Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Insight Live. I'm your host, Justin Cobb. Thank you all for tuning in wherever you are in the world. For those of you who are feeling brave, courageous, if you want to let us know where you all are tuning in from, by all means, feel free to drop it down. I know we have people tuning in from all six inhabited continents, which is fantastic. Thank you all for tuning in. And I would like for you all to meet this wonderful author. Yes, she's international best-selling. Yes, she's award-winning. And yes, she has a new book out, Surviving in a Toxic Workplace, Strategies that you can use to protect your career. And yes, it is coming out, and it was a privilege to read this book. And I want you all to meet the person behind it all. Please welcome Jacquie Abram. Jacquie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's always so much fun coming on your show. I have just such a passion for the people of Canada because, as you may recall, when I released the first book in the series, the Hush Money series, Canada was the first country to put Hush Money on the #1 Amazon bestsellers list. And, that always just meant such a great deal to me. And so every time I have an opportunity to meet with someone from Canada and to, talk on their podcast or on their radio show or their television show, it is always such an honor. And, I really appreciate you giving me your platform to talk about my new book, which is Surviving in a Toxic Workplace, Strategies to Help You Protect Your Career. So there were a lot of people who knew that I was writing another book with my daughter, Delilah. And originally, we were going to do the third installment in the Hush Money series. But I decided to do something a little different. And, I am proud to say that although our Hush Money series is groundbreaking, it's phenomenal. I'm proud of the work that we did. Surviving in a Toxic Workplace is probably the most powerful book that we've written. And so, Justin, you know me, I like to talk. And I'm probably going to be doing most of the talking today. You and I talked about the fact that I'll be doing some reading. But before we dive into surviving in a toxic workplace, is there anything that you want to say before I take it away?
Yes, so folks, for those of you who do not know what Insight is, those of you just tuning in, allow me to give you a brief introduction. Insight is a global multimedia exploration of the personal and the political. We are located on platforms including Medium, Spotify, and YouTube. And we have the privilege of working and collaborating with amazing guests from all over the globe who come on and share their stories. We center themes such as authenticity, critical thinking, interconnectedness, and social justice. By becoming the change we want to see in the world, we affect the ones that we need, and we are bringing the world closer together in the process. And Jacquie, you were actually the very first person who ever came on to the platform a little over a year ago. So the fact that you are joining us now on our live stream is fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Well, and it's been quite the whirlwind of a year. I mean, so much has happened. We wrote Hush Money 2. Then, of course, we wrote this book that we're going to talk about. Then I started teaching a powerful masterclass called How to Fight Discrimination in a Toxic Workplace. And then from there, we started a consultancy in May. And through the consultancy, so this was May of last year, we've actually helped over 92 people fight the discrimination that they're experiencing. We have clients in the US, in the UK, and in Canada, and we're helping tons of people walk away, not just with settlements or severances, but 6 figures. And so I'm so proud of that because I knew I could do it for myself and I had done it repeatedly for myself. But the test was, can I now take what I know and translate it to help other people do the same thing that I do? And the answer is a resounding yes. And so, because of that, every time someone would get this really nice settlement, they would refer everyone and their cousin to me. And so,
Yes.
my consultancy never lost clients, it just continued to grow.
That's beautiful, and it's
Yeah.
amazing, and I've had the privilege of sitting on with some of your previous live sessions you've done with other as well. Last one I believe was with Eliana, who's a fantastic human.
Yes.
But you mentioned before how, yes, with your experience, you as this Black woman who went and endured a lot of these struggles.
Mhm.
You started it out from this experience helping those who went through similar circumstances, but now you've expanded and gone beyond, and you've helped so many different kinds of people from so many different walks of life
Yes.
get the justice that they deserve. And the fact that you were able to alchemize your pain into purpose is amazing, and it is phenomenal that you've been able to do this.
Yeah, I'm really proud. It really has been just so beyond therapeutic for me. You remember I was in a very dark place. And so, with that being said, I want to read a little bit from Surviving in a Toxic Workplace. Number one, because it's really a big deal that I am at the point that I can now read my own books without just stopping and just breaking out into hysterical tears. So it's exciting for me to now actually make it through a live event, read content from my book, and not be so impacted by it that I can't continue the event, which was something that had happened repeatedly when I first started doing this work. I was so traumatized. And so, because of that, I actually now enjoy reading my books and telling people about what happened to me and what brought me to the work that I am doing right now. So, with your kind permission, I would like to share my screen and just tell people why I'm so excited and so passionate about the work that I do.
Mhm. Absolutely. And as one survivor of violence and hostility to another, I want
Yes.
to commend you for that. That is fantastic. Hashtag growth.
Yes.
And I am here rooting for you and in the trenches alongside you. And Lord knows it's more relevant now than ever. I hate to break it to folks, but
Yes.
we are beautiful creatures and we are going to take this and make something amazing out of it. Jackie,
Absolutely.
let's get the screen sharing going.
Wonderful. And, I'm probably going to be giving my age away right now, but I'm going to be looking at my larger screen because I need to see things a little bit bigger as I get older. So I've got another screen over here that's bigger. Okay. So I'll be looking this way.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to read a little bit from chapter one. I'm actually going to read chapter one. It's a very short chapter, but it will give your audience a glimpse into what I do and why I am so passionate about it. Okay. I never knew the cost of being Black in corporate America, the price I would pay with my dignity and fundamental rights as a human being, just to have a job that wasn't in a low income sector, a job that had a satisfying career path and gave me and my family a chance to live the American dream. But if I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have done things differently before taking the job that traumatized and nearly destroyed me. Maybe I would have bleached my dark skin to make it lighter, or removed my long dookie braids to straighten my hair. Maybe I would have bought blue contacts to hide my brown eyes and got a nose job with the butt reduction too. You know, do all the things I shoulda, woulda, coulda done to look less like me and more like them, just to fit into a mold I had no part in creating. No, I know me. And even if I could go back in time to that fateful day that changed my life in the worst way, I wouldn't change a thing because I'm the strong, beautiful Black woman God created me to be. Long dookie braids, dark skin, big button all. I'm Jacquie Abram. My daughters, Deborah, Delilah, and I, are the international best-selling and award-winning authors of Hush Money. I've been featured in Forbes, on Spectrum News, and on ABC affiliates, among others. Like you, I began my career in higher education, filled with ambition, hope, and determination. I was a pillar of confidence, a 6-foot-tall Janet Jackson lookalike, with a smile that could sink 1,000 ships and a walk that could literally stop traffic. I was an Amazon, my own Wonder Woman, with legs for miles and a warrior spirit burning deep inside me. It was that fire, that passion, that drive that fueled my rise up the ladder of success. And rise I did. I earned promotion after promotion, my work ethic speaking louder than words ever could. And I climbed that ladder of success, not because of favoritism or privilege, but because of the exceptional way that I performed my job. However, as I continued to reach new heights based on my skills and abilities, a change in leadership cost someone in the organization who wasn't there when I was hired, but who was there now to notice me. Someone who was not only in a higher position than mine, but who was also a toxic leader who didn't believe I deserved the position that I held because I was a Black woman. And so when this leader began targeting me, she used the power, influence, and authority of her position to inspire others in the organization to conspire against me. Before long, I wasn't dealing with one leader targeting me anymore. I was now dealing with people, a whole lot of people, who were all working together to pull that rug from under me, causing me and that ladder of success that I was climbing up on to come crashing down. Sadly, this was just the beginning. In the years that followed, I ran from company to company, trying to find a place where I could not only survive working while Black, but also thrive. But here's the problem. I ran from one company because I was Black, and when I ran over here to this next company, guess what? I was still Black. And although the companies were different, the playbook the toxic leaders in each company used was repeatedly the same, and it repeatedly derailed my career. Their coordinated efforts were devastatingly effective and repeatedly left me jobless, homeless, and struggling as a single mother to provide for my 2 daughters. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it also left me completely broken and traumatized to such a degree that I may never fully recover. Now, many Black women speak about the psychological trauma caused by toxic workplaces, and I'm no exception because the trauma is real. But for me specifically, the physical trauma, 100 pounds of weight gain and hair loss, took a toll on me because it was so devastating that it was beyond anything I imagined I could possibly endure. So at 6 feet tall, I'm a tall girl. I never blended in anywhere. I always stood out. But standing out as a 6-foot-tall Janet Jackson lookalike was a lot different than standing out as a 6-foot-tall version of Medea. And I just cannot tell you. I can't even begin to describe adequately the hurtful, mortifyingly hurtful things that people were saying, not only about me, but even to me. One of the milder examples occurred when a group of Latina women in a company where I worked As they saw me turn the corner, they switched from speaking English to speaking Spanish. And as I walked by, one of them muttered the words Jabba the Hutt in Spanish as I walked by.
Mm-hmm.
Another person commented on a post that I was making. This was after I tried to find my voice, because I had sunken so deep into the shadows that it really took a lot to pull me out of the darkness that I was in. And so I decided I wanted to tell people what happened to me, because I was losing my sanity. And so I came out and I started just talking a little bit after I wrote Hush Money, and making posts as I tried to lose some of this weight that I had gained, from the pure stress of everything that I was dealing with. And so I made this post, and the person that responded to this particular post, as I was, talking about my weight loss efforts, the person said, "Who the F cares about your 3 to 5 miles of daily walking? That's nothing. Racial trauma, my God. Don't be you see that word there,
Oh, geez.
and start running those 3 to 5 miles a day. I personally swim 6K every day, and I'm not bitching about anything. Instead of posting shits about racism, you should do some sports and stop eating shitty American fast food so you won't be an obese whale. And maybe people would stop making fun of you."
Mm-hmm.
Yes. In many ways, the physical trauma exacerbated the psychological trauma I was experiencing. And I found myself standing on the edge of the ocean at Salt Creek Beach, on the verge of committing suicide by drowning. At the time, it seemed like a good idea, because I never learned to swim. But in my darkest moments, God intervened, and he opened my eyes to a powerful truth. Now, I didn't put it here, but let me tell you what that powerful truth was. In that moment, God told me if I went into the sea, my youngest daughter would follow me, because I didn't realize at the time that she was dealing with the same thing in another state. And, I don't know if you have any children, but it's one thing to mess with me, but it's an entirely different story to mess with my girls.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had that revelation, I packed up, and that was the start of me reclaiming my life. But first, I had to go deal with the company that was destroying my daughter. And so God intervened, opened my eyes to a powerful truth. My horrifying experiences with toxic leaders were not my own. Countless others, including my girls, my beautiful girls, were suffering the same fate. And with God's help, I would become the intervention that my girls and so many other people needed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked away from my career in higher education to save my sanity, but I never walked away from a single toxic job empty-handed, because I knew how to fight. I was actually exceptional at fighting back. Okay. And I still had that fire in me, that fire that refused to be extinguished. And I had that warrior spirit, but I also had the Holy Spirit that was working within me, guiding me with strength and wisdom, as he just kept bringing me people who needed my special kind of help. And I secured those large settlements during my career. Okay. Multiple 6-figure settlements, because I knew how to fight, and I was exceptional at fighting back. But, here's the thing. When toxic leaders destroy your job, they take away your job, but they take away your income too. And for me, I'm being wrongfully terminated. I'm being forced out of the company. Okay. I'm living off the little bit of savings that I've accumulated. Okay. And then when I run out of that little bit of savings, Me and my girls kept repeatedly finding ourselves homeless. But even when I was homeless, I always went back and I always fought these companies. And that's how I repeatedly secured these big, uh, multiple six-figure settlements. Okay. So we wrote these books, Hush Money, and now this book. This book is the most powerful book I've ever written. We wrote this book to show you very clearly with templates, strategies, lessons, warnings, everything you need to know, okay? Because we don't want you to wait until you are wrongfully terminated to start fighting back. No one should lose their income and risk being homeless because of toxic leaders. So we decided to teach people from all walks of life, no matter what color, what race, whatever they're dealing with. We wanted to give them the strategies that were working for us. Because if you fight them while you're still employed, it stops them in their tracks in a lot of cases. It slows them down and it keeps you earning an income while you're negotiating those big settlements. And so that was the driving force behind the work that we do. We didn't want you to wait until they fire you or force you out of the company to save your sanity. We wanted to tell you, this is what we did. These are the warning signs you need to pay attention to, because there are always warning signs when you're about to be terminated. These are the emails you need to be writing as these things are happening. We lay out the templates. We tell you the tools. We tell you the resources we used. And we lay it out in such a powerful way that when you read just the first 2 chapters of this book, you're ready to take on this fight. So, does that make sense?
Yes. And you gave me the privilege of being able to check this out for myself. And can I just say, too, that these templates that you provided for folks,
Mm-hmm.
so fantastic. I can only speak from my personal experience dealing with workplace hostilities. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. I've had plenty of beautiful jobs in other places. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the couple that are riddled in between.
Yes.
And and it was so terrible. Oh my gosh. But especially as a younger professional, the amount of stress, and especially if you're coming from a marginalized identity who doesn't have the same means of support in order to potentially fight back against this kind of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I could, like, I as I was reading through your book, I literally said to myself, wow, I wish I had this, like, 24-year-old Justin when he was going through that experience. 25-year-old Justin would have appreciated this so much.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
fantastic.
Thank you so much. And so, when we decided to do this event, like I said, one of the big things I wanted to do was I wanted to read my book, because I believe you attended the events in the past where I couldn't. I think I made it through chapter 8 of Hush Money, and then I just shut down and I just started crying. And I said, I can't continue. And so I just ended the live event. So it really is a big deal for me to be able to read my story and tell people what I went through, okay? So before we dive into the next chapter, so you can see how the book is laid out, the warnings that you get along the way, and the powerful strategies and templates you get at the end of each chapter, I just want to let you know a couple of other things, okay? So, first of all, I am not an attorney. My daughters are not attorneys. We cannot give you legal advice, okay? So there is nothing in our books, master classes, consulting work, courses, events that you should interpret as legal advice, okay? We are simply women who have had amazing success with negotiating large settlements, multiple six-figure settlements for ourselves and for other people. And so what we're doing is we're leveraging our lived experiences and our strategies and our skills and abilities to help others do the same, okay? So that's number one. Now, the other thing that I wanted to share with you is in surviving in a toxic workplace. Okay, so we're going to dig into that a little more. We dive into the scenarios in Hush Money, a book inspired by my experiences working in higher education to illustrate the strategies I repeatedly used to fight the discrimination I experienced. However, because I received hush money to buy my silence, and before they give you that nice six-figure check to walk down the road with, they also give you a non-disclosure agreement to guarantee your silence. That's why there's never been a set of books like these written before. There's not another set of books like these anywhere in the world, okay? And there's a reason for that. They bind your silence with that non-disclosure agreement, okay? You cannot tell anybody what happened to you in that organization. And so, yeah, I took their money and I signed their non-disclosure agreement. And then I found another way to still tell the world what happened to me without putting myself in harm's way. So I created a character, okay? A character that I call Ebony. And so it's through the eyes of Ebony and the situations that I fictionalized in Hush Money to keep myself safe while telling the world what happened to me, that you will step into my shoes and you will feel everything that I experienced, the discrimination I experienced, the mistakes, the many, many, many mistakes I made along the way, the trauma I suffered, and you will feel it in a real and authentic way. Because in order for you to fully understand how to fight this fight, you've got to step into the shoes of a racial discrimination victim and feel what they feel, see what they see. Okay? And so, you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay,
Empathy caps on, everyone. Let's go.
all right, wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to dive into the scenarios in Hush Money. This is the very first book that my daughters and I wrote. It is written raw. It's got all kinds of flaws because we're not writers, but it just did the most amazing work, including being a gold medal winner in the social issues genre and just so many other accolades. So let's dive in. And I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit here. So chapter 2 in Surviving in a Toxic Workplace is called Warning Signs. It was a chilly morning in the city of Austin, Texas, on the day my life was changed. I was sitting at the dining table with Mom, sipping a cup of coffee and browsing the want ads in the newspaper as she read the headline news. Mom, a beautiful woman born in Shreveport, Louisiana, was 51 years old with a taller than average height, a slender physique, caramel-colored skin as smooth as silk, and glistening green eyes. She had long, shiny black hair, dressed with a modest elegance, and had a personality that could charm a poisonous snake. Mom adopted me when I was born and named me Ebony to highlight the beauty she saw in my dark skin. And although I didn't look anything like her, she was an amazing parent to me and was great in so many ways. The want ads, on the other hand, were not so great. Jobs that I was qualified for and that also paid well were far and few between, and I was tired of working dead-end jobs that made it hard to make ends meet. As I wadded the want ads into a ball, Mom sensed my frustration, put down her newspaper, and placed her hand on top of mine. "You can stay long as you like, Ebony," she said with love in her eyes. "But don't worry. God has a way of working things out. Mom's words were encouraging, but it was her gentle touch that comforted me the most. And I was at a point in my life where I really needed comforting. At 28 years old, I was going through a divorce, living with mom in her small one-bedroom apartment, and trying to get my son back from what was supposed to be a summer vacation in New York with his father. As I thanked mom for her support, the phone rang. It was a call from a woman at the temp agency I had signed up with 2 weeks earlier. Dave Run Career Institute needs a secretary. It's a temp position that pays $16.83 an hour. It's the equivalent to $35,000 a year. Are you interested? Heck yeah, that's a lot of moolah, I thought to myself before calmly verbalizing my interest. And that's where my story begins, with a call that changed my life in the best way and also the worst way. The call that began my six-figure career in higher education and my descent into racial discrimination hell. When I hung up the phone, I was smiling from ear to ear and couldn't wait to share the good news with Mom. Mom was thrilled. I told you God has a way of working things out. All you got to do is believe. The temp assignment wasn't a full-time job and didn't have any real benefits, so you're probably wondering why I was so excited. The reason is really quite simple. For the first time in my life, I had gotten my foot in the door with a company that had real career potential. Dave Run Career Institute was a popular for-profit college with multiple campuses in the U.S., including several campuses in Texas. I had seen Dave Run's commercials on television and even considered enrolling in one of their degree programs. Working in higher education, even as a temp, was a step in the right direction as far as I was concerned. In January 2012, my journey at Dave Run's main campus began in the same city where I lived, and from the very first day, it felt like home. Everything from the environment to the type of work I was doing was amazing. I was in perfect sync with the chancellor, Dr. Hall, a professional, distinguished-looking man in his 50s, who exuded confidence and was as tall as a pro basketball player. He was a handsome man with tan skin, fashionably styled salt and pepper hair, and an athletic physique. His eyes were greener than an emerald, and there was a warmth and kindness about him that immediately put me at ease. Although Dr. Hall was the most powerful person on campus, he took me under his wing and treated me much like the father figure I'd never had. I developed an instant respect for him and used the computer skills I taught myself at a safe house for abused women to impress him. And impressed he was. He was amazed with my ability to manage budgets, prepare meeting minutes, and develop presentations, and he showed his appreciation every day. I enjoyed my job and planned to work for Dr. Hall and Dave Run for many years to come. After working on my temp assignment for 2 months, Dr. Hall called me to his office to meet with him. "You're the best assistant I've ever had," he said with a smile, "and the only one that reminds me of a Nubian queen I saw in a movie yesterday." "Thank you. It's my braids, isn't it?" I had been styling my hair in dookie braids for the last 2 years because they were easy to do and I always received so many compliments. "Yes, it's your braids," he said with a warm smile, adding that he was going to buy out my contract with the temp agency and hire me permanently. "How does senior secretary sound? It comes with a $5,000 raise." "That sounds amazing," I exclaimed as I jumped up and gave him a hug. Warning: never let verbal conversations stay verbal. I just cannot stress this enough. This was a missed opportunity for Ebony. Don't let it be a missed opportunity for you. When someone gives you a verbal compliment about your work performance or makes a favorable promise about your career, never let those verbal conversations stay verbal. Turn them into written evidence that you can later use to protect yourself if your work is ever called into question or the favorable promise is broken. Now, back to our story. When I left Dr. Hall's office, I was on top of the world and couldn't believe how quickly my hard work had paid off. In a matter of months, I had a full-time job that paid $40,000 a year and came with excellent benefits, including 100% tuition reimbursement. I couldn't wait to tell Mom the good news, so I called her at work. Mom, you'll never guess in a million years what happened. You win the lotto, child? No, something better. Dr. Hall hired me full-time and gave me a $5,000 raise. I'm so proud of you, honey. God is good. I wish I could talk more, but gotta get back to the machines. I could feel Mom's smile through the phone as she hung up and went back to work. Mom was a machinist and made $11 an hour standing on her feet, operating machines for 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. Standing for that many hours a day would be hard for anyone, but for Mom, it was especially hard because of her age and health issues. Now that I had a permanent job that paid well, my hope was that I could eventually take care of her so she didn't have to work so hard. Shortly after hanging up with Mom, Dr. Hall called me back to his office. I want you to start managing my incoming email. I get too much and there's not enough hours in the day to respond. The next day, we met with the director of IT, and Dr. Hall instructed her to provide me with access to his email account so I could manage it in a clandestine way. And even though she expressed concerns about providing me with access, she gave it to me anyway, and I began managing Dr. Hall's incoming email that day. I felt so important. I was privy to confidential executive level information, making important decisions on Dr. Hall's behalf, and doing my best to ensure that no one suspected that it was me and not Dr. Hall who was in control of his email account. Warning: be wary of clandestine verbal directives. This was another missed opportunity for Ebony. Dr. Hall's directive for Ebony to manage his incoming email in a clandestine way should have raised some red flags. While the opportunity to access executive level information and make important decisions might feel empowering, the use of the word clandestine indicates secrecy, which could later place Ebony in a vulnerable position. If this arrangement were ever called into question, whether by colleagues, supervisors, or even Dr. Hall himself, Ebony could find herself solely responsible for decisions and actions taken under his email account. Now back to our story. Things were great in the beginning, but then rumors began to spread throughout the campus that it was little old me and not Dr. Hall who was creating the responses coming from his email account. The rumors spread like wildfire and caused such an uproar that within days, dignitaries from Dabrun's parent company, Corporate, were at our campus interviewing employees. When it was my turn to be interviewed, I was terrified. I felt like I was standing in front of a firing squad, both figuratively and literally. How long have you been pretending to be Dr. Hall? A man asked. What else were you doing for Dr. Hall? Another man rudely asked. Did you knowingly violate our IT security policy? A woman asked. The questions came from left and right, and although I responded honestly, their stoic demeanor made me feel like Dr. Hall's job wasn't the only one at risk. The corporate reps continued grilling me for about an hour, and I was sweating bullets the whole time. Then I was finally released. As I walked back to my cubicle, all eyes were on me, and I felt ashamed, even though I didn't think I had done anything wrong. After what seemed like an eternity, Corporate emailed an organizational announcement to all staff and faculty stating that Dr. Hall had resigned from his position as chancellor for personal reasons. When I received the email in my inbox, I was crushed because Dr. Hall was the best boss I'd ever had. And as I drove home, I experienced a rainbow of emotions. I was sad Dr. Hall was gone, happy I still had my job, worried about reporting to a new boss, and hopeful my future at Daybren would still be bright. Warning: a change in leadership. While new leaders can bring fresh perspectives, they can also bring challenges that transform your supportive and thriving workplace into a toxic one. This shift can happen quickly, sometimes in a matter of weeks, leaving you vulnerable and unprotected. Even more importantly, new leaders bring their own network of loyalists into their new roles to fill important positions. Look at what's happened in the presidency right now, creating instability among existing staff. Not only have these loyalists worked with your new leader in prior roles, but they also have a deep understanding of your new leader's management style, priorities, and expectations. This dynamic increases the likelihood of existing employees being let go to make room for these trusted allies, and we're seeing this play out in living color right now in politics, okay? Now back to our story. 2 weeks later, Mia Kelly, the new chancellor, arrived on campus, and my hopes for a bright future at Daybren were instantly dashed. Miss Kelly was the polar opposite of Dr. Hall. She was a statuesque woman in her 40s, with cream-colored skin, shoulder-length wavy blonde hair, and vivid blue eyes that could melt the polar ice caps. She was as tall as a runway model, wore a fitted dress with high-heeled strappy sandals, and had a way of looking at me that sent chills down my spine. Perhaps the biggest difference between Dr. Hall and Miss Kelly was that Dr. Hall liked and respected me, and Miss Kelly, on the other hand, despised me and made sure I knew it during our first one-on-one meeting in her office. "Listen, Agony," she said with a low, sultry voice. "Ebony, ma'am," I nervously replied, interrupting her. My name is Ebony." "Okay, Ebony, what are you, 4 feet tall?" "No, I'm 5'4". "Well, that's not tall enough, Agony. Wear higher heels. Towering over you makes my back hurt." I'm a petite woman by nature and was already wearing 2-inch high heels, so the idea that wearing higher heels would keep her from towering over me was laughable. And I did laugh because I thought she was joking. This was a mistake. "Oh, yes, I heard about you. You're the reason my predecessor is gone." My eyes became as big as saucers. "That's not true. I don't know where this is coming from. Have I done something wrong?" Miss Kelly didn't say a word. She just leaned back in her chair and continued staring at me like I was an alien she wanted to explore. I didn't know what to say or do, so I sat there speechless and awkwardly staring back. After 2 of the longest minutes I had ever experienced, she motioned me to leave, and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Warning: no boundaries, no respect. Ebony's first meeting with Miss Kelly presented a critical opportunity to set boundaries, a chance that, unfortunately, she missed. During this interaction, Miss Kelly's behavior was blatantly unprofessional and hostile. She deliberately mispronounced Ebony's name as Agony, a mocking and demeaning act that signaled her lack of respect. Additionally, Miss Kelly's inappropriate comments about Ebony's height and heels, coupled with her false insinuation that Ebony was responsible for Dr. Hall's departure, were calculated to undermine Ebony's confidence and assert dominance. By failing to address these behaviors or establish boundaries, Ebony risked reinforcing dynamics where Miss Kelly could continue to demean her without accountability. Now, back to our story. The next few months were particularly difficult as Miss Kelly tried to break me like I was a wild horse she was determined and eager to tame. She humiliated me in meetings almost daily, interrupted me mid-sentence to dismiss my ideas in front of colleagues, and berated me over minor things like the way I organized my notes. She also dehumanized me with threats and fear, warning me repeatedly that I was walking on thin ice, without offering any constructive feedback or clear reasons for her threats. To make matters worse, Miss Kelly removed my core responsibilities, the computer-based tasks that challenged me and brought me joy, without explanation, leaving me to focus on menial tasks like fetching her coffee, picking up her dry cleaning, and running personal errands. What was once a fulfilling role was reduced to servitude that chipped away at my confidence and professional identity, making it increasingly difficult to see a way forward. Warning: the removal of duties. Miss Kelly removed Ebony's core duties and replaced them with menial tasks, a move that should raise significant red flags. In a toxic workplace, the removal of your duties is often part of a calculated strategy designed to limit your exposure, decrease your value, and make it easier to manage you out. Now back to our story. I'll never forget the day Miss Kelly summoned me to her office, where she was entertaining visitors from a sister campus. When I walked in, all eyes were locked on me, and I could tell I was the topic of much conversation. "Meet Agony, my poor excuse for a secretary," she said as she flipped her hair back. No one said a word, and the silence in the room was deafening. As everyone stared at me, I was frozen, too humiliated to move or even say what my correct name was. I just stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. "Well, Agony, what are you waiting for?" she asked, raising her eyebrows at me. "Can't you see we need coffee?" At that moment, I found just enough strength to turn around and walk out before bursting into tears. Then I ducked into the bathroom and called Mom. She's trying to break me. I don't know how much longer I can last." "It breaks my heart to see you hurting, honey. But don't make waves." "What did I do to make her hate me so much?" "You didn't do anything. We've been dealing with this crap our whole lives. She don't want you there because you're Black, but don't quit. Don't lose your good job over this, okay?" Mom could tell I was still distraught, so she left me with one final thought to ponder. "I know it seems like she's in control, but I promise you, it only seems that way. God's in control, and He knows what you're going through." Mom's reminder about God comforted me. So after hanging up the phone, I asked God to give me strength, then went to the break room to make coffee. Afterwards, I took the cups of fresh coffee to Miss Kelly's office, distributed them to each person, and quickly left. When I returned to my cubicle, I decided to educate myself on workplace harassment because knowledge is power, and I needed to know if there was anything I could legally do to make it stop. I did some research and discovered that harassment, according to the EEOC, consists of unwelcome conduct based on a protected class, such as race or skin color. It becomes illegal when the conduct is so severe and pervasive that it creates a work environment that is intimidating, hostile, or abusive. Although Miss Kelly had created a work environment that was intimidating, hostile, and abusive, the majority of her actions, from what I could tell, weren't based on a protected class and therefore were not illegal. Warning: connecting the discrimination dots. Ebony's assessment of her situation was partially accurate. She correctly identified that harassment becomes illegal when under the EEOC, when it is so severe or pervasive that it creates a hostile, intimidating, or abusive work environment and is based on a protected class such as race, skin color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity or pregnancy, national origin, age, disability, or genetic information. However, Ebony did not fully grasp the subtle ways in which Miss Kelly's behavior was connected to her race, a protected class, As chancellor, Miss Kelly held the highest position at Debron, while Ebony, the senior secretary, was not only the sole Black employee reporting directly to her, but also the only direct report who was not in a director level position or higher. This dynamic revealed a stark disparity in how Ebony was treated compared to her peers. Although Ebony didn't realize it at the time, Miss Kelly's actions in repeatedly mispronouncing her name as Agony, publicly humiliating her, and replacing her core duties with menial tasks reminiscent of servitude were in fact discriminatory. Now back to our story. And I know we've got about 5 minutes, and I probably have about 10 minutes in this chapter. Are we good to go 5 minutes past?
I am open to going after. Yes.
Okay, good. I just don't want to leave the audience hanging. I want them to see what happens at the end of the chapter in the templates and the strategies. Now back to our story. Since I couldn't afford to quit my job, I continued reporting to Miss Kelly and suffering in silence for 10 long months. That is, until the day she summoned me to her office for what I knew was to be fired. So after taking my personal belongings to my car, I went to her office, sat down at her desk, and braced myself for the worst. Agony, she said with a smug look on her face. I hired a new secretary. And since I don't need 2 secretaries, I know I'm fired. I just don't know what I'm going to tell my son. Son? You have a child? Yes, I'm trying to save enough money to get him back from New York. I didn't know that. You walk around here acting like everything is rainbows, bubblegum, and unicorns. I don't know if it was the knowledge that I was a mother struggling financially or that I had a son that touched Miss Kelly. But as I spoke, the smug look on her face disappeared before my eyes, and her icy heart seemed to thaw a little that day. Miss Kelly leaned back in her chair, crossed her toned legs, and sighed. Ebony, you're not fired. We have an opening in the student finance department, and if you want to transfer, we'll see how you do. It's a demotion, and your salary will be reduced. But if you want it, it's yours. I don't know what shocked me more, that I still had a job or that she finally said my name right. But as I sat there, tears began rolling down my cheeks as I silently cried. When I left her office, I went back to my cubicle and thanked God that I still had my job, because I was still making more money than I had in previous jobs, even with the reduced salary. The next day, I transferred to the student finance department, where I was the only Black employee. My annual salary was reduced to $37,000, and my title was changed to student finance advisor. As I sat in my new office and reflected on my first year of employment, I could hardly believe how fast my dream job turned into a nightmare, simply because there was a change in leadership from a great boss to a horrific one. But now that I no longer reported to Miss Kelly, I was confident that there would be nothing but sunshine and blue skies ahead of my career. Or so I thought. So at the end of each chapter, there is a summary. Then we cover the lessons. Then we go into the strategies. Then we provide the templates. So you get the summary of everything that we discussed. And then you go into the lessons. So lesson 1, never let verbal conversation stay verbal. Scenario. Dr. Hall praised Ebony's exceptional performance and verbally promised her a full-time role as senior secretary, including a $5,000 raise. Thrilled, Ebony accepted it without documenting the conversation. When her career later faced challenges, she lacked evidence of this agreement to protect her accomplishments and defend against unfavorable change. Lesson learned: verbal agreements, while encouraging, hold no weight without documentation. Failing to turn verbal conversations into written records leaves you vulnerable if promises are broken or your performance is questioned. Even well-intentioned verbal agreements can be forgotten or misrepresented. Documenting these interactions reinforces your professionalism, ensures clarity, and creates a record to protect your career. So the strategy, the E in email stands for evidence. That is my motto, my favorite phrase. After verbal conversations involving compliments, career promises, or significant directives, send a professional follow-up email to document the discussion. This establishes a clear record and ensures mutual understanding. Your email should thank the person for their feedback or promise, recap key points of the conversation in a positive and professional tone, avoid appearing distrustful, frame the email as a confirmation and gesture of gratitude. So here's your template. Subject, thank you. Dear Dr. Hall, thank you for the kind words during our meeting today. Hearing you say that I'm the best assistant you've ever had and that you plan to hire me full time with the $5,000 raise truly means a lot. It inspires me to continue giving you my best and supporting you in the Dave Run team. Thank you again for your encouragement and support. Okay. Lesson 2, be wary of clandestine verbal directives. So you get the scenario, you get the lesson. Verbal directives involving secrecy or sensitive tasks can leave you vulnerable if questioned. Without written evidence, you may be held solely accountable for actions performed under someone else's instructions. Clarifying and documenting these directives protects you from misrepresentation or liability. Same strategy. The E in email stands for evidence. Here's your template. Subject, follow up on our discussion. Dear Dr. Hall, thank you for entrusting me with managing your incoming email account. As we agreed, I will manage your emails in a confidential manner to streamline your workload. Please let me know if there are specific priorities or guidelines you'd like me to follow. Now she's got proof that I didn't do this on my own. You told me to. Okay. You talk about the change in leadership. Lesson learned. We talked about, how you can be susceptible to being managed out as they bring in people that they want to replace you. So this is an opportunity, even in a toxic environment, to establish yourself as an asset. So you have to get better at tooting your own horn. Beep, beep, okay? Tooting your own horn so that they see you as a valuable person that they're not so quick to let go of.
Amen.
Yes. And so here's the template. Okay, subject, follow up on instructions and next steps. Dear Miss Kelly, welcome to Daybreak. I'm excited about the opportunity to work under your leadership and contribute to your vision. As part of my role, I've had the privilege of managing budgets, preparing executive level presentations, and coordinating initiatives that supported Dr. Hall's leadership goals. And so you see, for every chapter, you get the summary, you get the lessons learned, you get the strategy, and you get the template. And as things become more toxic, it really becomes critical that you learn these skills before you find yourself now having been wrongfully terminated and now trying to go back and fight. This is how you go into every job hoping for the best, but being prepared from day one for the worst, because it's better to know these skills and to have these strategies and to have this documentation and not need it than to now find yourself in a toxic environment because of a change in leadership. And you need these things, but you don't have them.
That's so true. And I wanted to echo what you said as well, because this is literally the paper trail. And that way you have the records. Something that I wish that I know I had, that I
Yes.
didn't have, that I should have, but I did not. And so it was very easy when a push came to shove for the narrative to be spun around and
Yes.
made as though, and you talk about this in your book as well, how
Yes.
a lot of these people will try to, to to twist and turn the narrative and make you the problem, and that's part
Exactly.
of the what you call the playbook.
It's part of the playbook.
Mhm.
And this book goes into the playbook very deeply because most people don't realize that there is a concerted effort to get certain people that belong to certain groups out of leadership positions, okay? And so there is a playbook that is used to do that. And if you know the playbook and you know the strategies and you know how to create that arsenal of weapons, everything that I teach you in this book, your chances of either staying in that company but going into a better improved environment dramatically increases. Or if you want to walk away but you don't want to walk away empty handed, you want to walk away with your pockets full, this is how you do that. You know, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in my consultancy, because remember, I've got over 92 clients, okay? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see is when they know that there's something going on and it's not quite right, they're afraid to send those emails to the person doing it to them. So, what they do is they send an email to themselves all by itself, or they make notes. Well, if you are not confronting this person with this in a professional, okay, in a professional way, when it comes down to you trying to defend yourself, they're going to say, I don't know why she sent that email to herself because I didn't do that. She's lying. Okay. I never said that. That never happened. And it's your word against theirs. Okay. If you make just notes about what's happening, but you don't send those notes to the person, you have to be willing to confront the uncomfortable, okay? Not in a confrontational way, but in a professional way. You have to stand behind what you're saying. The way you do that is you send that person an email. That way, the onus is on them to respond back to that email and say, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. But if you just send an email to yourself without this is a he said, she said thing, and you will not get the outcome you seek.
A lot of people might be afraid to send that email because it does put them in a vulnerable position. But I remind
Mhm.
people all the time that when you're getting ready to go, if you want to, if you're getting ready, like, I hate these analogies, but I'll use it in this one. If you're getting ready to
Mhm.
spar, you got to
Yes.
be ready to, you get your gloves on, you're ready to take it
Mhm.
to the ring. You got to
Mhm.
make sure that, yes, they're probably going to throw a couple of hits at you, but you know what? That's why we have the paper trail. The paper trail is us blocking our face and protecting us from getting this beat down.
That's right. And if you notice, Ebony, Ebony, Ebony wrapped her emails in what I call fluff.
Mhm.
So they didn't suspect that she was collecting evidence because she wrapped them in sugary sweetness. Okay. So, for example, in the examples that I wrote in the templates that she should have done, but she didn't. But in the templates, she said, thank you for, making the promise to give me the promotion. And, it's so wonderful that you want me to manage your emails in a confidential way. And, please let me know if there's any priorities. So he gets it and he has no clue that what she's doing is documenting what you told her, but she's doing it in a fluffy way that you can't tell that what she's really doing is creating evidence of your directive in that conversation. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
that's something that I call wrapping it in fluff. You don't want to come out and say, just just a quick note to make sure I understand that you said this. No, you wrap it in fluff. You thank them. Thank you for the meeting we had today. Um, you know, just to make sure that I'm on the same page with you. I think this is what you're wanting. You want me to get you coffee? I tend to make my coffee pretty strong. If you want your coffee to be lighter, please let me know. I can reduce the amount of grounds I'm putting in the coffee. So you see how I've written a nice little email, saying if I'm making your coffee too strong, please let me know. Because I tend to like mine a little strong, giggle, happy face, whatever. So she gets that, and she doesn't realize that I'm documenting the fact that you have me fetching and making your coffee.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what I call wrapping it in fluff.
Wrapping it in fluff. But
Mhm.
yes, let's go. Put it in the wrapping paper, folks, and make it
There
pretty.
you go. There you go. And I just want to thank you for giving me your platform, allowing me to read. You know, there are still some parts of my story, especially dealing with my mom, that are still ultra sensitive for me, but I power through them. I am proud of myself, and I know my mom's proud of me too.
Yes, and I am so grateful that you came on to share your story with us, your work, and it is a pleasure to have you back on Inside Jackie. It means the world. And audiences, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I know that we're running over, but
Yeah.
the work that Jackie is doing is not only phenomenal, but it is so necessary. Jackie, before we go and before we wrap up, what is the best way if people ever want to collaborate with you, if they ever want to consult with your services?
Yes.
First, let's answer that. How do we do that?
So I practically live on LinkedIn. 99% of my business for my consultancy comes from LinkedIn. And so I practically live there. If you want a response from me within 24 hours, send me a message and get my attention in that message. Say, toxic workplace. You will guarantee get my attention and you'll get a very quick response from me. The other way that you can reach me quickly is by sending me an email. Just send an email to Jacquie Abram, spelled as it is here, but let me spell it in case you can't see my little tag there. JACQUIEABRAM at gmail.com. And if you decide that you want to read Surviving in a Toxic Workplace based on me reading to you today, I like to do my little character voices because it helps me power through the trauma of what I went through. And it allows me to tie these voices to these heinous people that I was dealing with. And it kind of gives me a little bit of joy and satisfaction. But if you were motivated by this particular event to read Surviving in a Toxic Workplace, I would love to speak with you on Zoom face to face after you read it, to hear your thoughts and to know if you learned something that you didn't already know.
That's awesome. Jackie,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And
you.
folks, thank you for tuning in. Reach out to Jackie, collaborate with her, make something awesome. And Lord knows, do it because if we don't, who will? And this world is going to be better and brighter, not only with working with Jackie, but when we come together and when we use our talents and our skills to make a difference in this world. These are Jackie's insights. Thank you for tuning in and be sure to stay tuned for more insight. We got more coming.
Yay.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.